The blood-curdling scream pierced the Montana evening air as Dahlia Reynolds fought against the iron grip on her auburn hair, her body dragging through the dirt toward a waiting wagon where 3 men with cruel smiles waited. It was 1875 in Montana Territory, and lawlessness still reigned in the small settlement of Pine Creek, just 2 days' ride from Montana City. "Let me go, you filthy snake," Dahlia cried, clawing at the thick hand twisted in her hair. Her simple blue dress was already torn at the shoulder, dirt staining the fabric she'd taken such care to keep clean despite the harsh frontier life. The man Walter Jenkins, a local troublemaker known for his vicious temper, merely laughed. "Your pa owes me money, girl. Since he ain't around to pay, I reckon you'll do just fine instead." Dahlia had been walking back from the general store when Jenkins and his men had ambushed her. Her father lay sick in their small homestead, unaware his daughter was being abducted over the gambling debts he'd accumulated during his illness. "Please," she struggled, feeling hair tear from her scalp as Jenkins dragged her closer to the waiting wagon. His companions laughed, one already reaching down to grab her. The thunder of hoofbeats barely registered through Dahlia's panic until a cloud of dust rose beside the wagon and a deep voice commanded, "Let the lady go." The dust settled to reveal a man astride a magnificent chestnut stallion. His face was partially hidden beneath the brim of his Stetson, but Dahlia could see the hard set of his jaw and the glint of determination in his blue eyes. A star-shaped badge glinted on his vest. Owen Daniels had arrived in Pine Creek just 3 days prior, having accepted the position of sheriff after the previous lawman had been shot dead in a saloon dispute. At 32, he'd already earned a reputation along the frontier as a man who stood for justice, regardless of the odds. "This ain't your concern, Sheriff," Jenkins spat, though his grip on Dahlia's hair loosened slightly. "Private matter between me and the Reynolds family." Owen's hand rested casually on the Colt revolver at his hip. "Kidnapping a woman in broad daylight looks like my concern, Jenkins. I've heard about you. Let her go now, and maybe you don't spend the next month in my jail." Jenkins's face darkened with rage. "You think that badge means anything out here? We've run off better men than you." "I'm not asking again," Owen said, his voice dangerously calm. What happened next was a blur to Dahlia. Jenkins released her hair to reach for his weapon, but Owen was faster. In one fluid motion, the sheriff drew and fired a warning shot into the dirt beside Jenkins's boot. In the moment of confusion, Owen spurred his horse forward, leaning down to sweep Dahlia up with one strong arm. She gasped as she was lifted effortlessly onto the saddle in front of him. "Hold tight," he murmured, and then they were off, the stallion's powerful muscles propelling them forward as Jenkins's cursing faded behind them. Dahlia clutched the sheriff's arm, her heart pounding with fear and something else she couldn't name as they rode hard away from town, the wind whipping her loosened hair across her face. She'd never been this close to a man before, could feel the steady beat of his heart against her back, smell the leather and pine scent of him. "Are you hurt, Miss Reynolds?" Owen asked, his voice close to her ear as they continued to ride. "No," she managed, though her scalp burned where Jenkins had pulled her hair. "How do you know my name?" "Small town," he replied. "Not many folks I haven't been introduced to since arriving. Your father was mentioned as one of the original settlers here." They rode for several minutes more before Owen slowed the horse to a trot, then eventually a walk. They had traveled a good distance from town, following the stream that wound through the valley. The sun was beginning to set, painting the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "I should get you home," Owen said, though he made no immediate move to turn the horse around. "Those men might still be looking for you." Dahlia nodded, suddenly aware of how intimate their position was. Her body pressed against his on the saddle. "My father, he's been ill. He doesn't know about the debt to Jenkins." "Gambling debt?" Owen asked, his tone neutral, Dahlia felt shame burn her cheeks. Yes, before he fell ill, Pa would spend evenings at the saloon. I didn't know how bad it had gotten until Jenkins came to our door last week, demanding payment. Owen guided the horse toward a small clearing beside the stream. We'll rest here a moment before heading to your place. I want to make sure Jenkins and his men aren't waiting for us on the main road. He dismounted first, then reached up to help Dahlia down. His hands were strong and calloused, but gentle as they spanned her waist. When her feet touched the ground, she swayed slightly, the aftermath of fear making her legs unsteady. Owen caught her elbow to steady her. Easy now. Their eyes met, and Dahlia felt something flutter in her chest. Owen Daniels was handsome in a rugged way, with those startling blue eyes and dark hair that curled slightly where it met his collar. A small scar crossed his left eyebrow, and the beginnings of stubble darkened his jawline. "Thank you," she said softly, "for saving me. Just doing my job, Miss Reynolds." He released her arm and walked his horse to the stream to drink. Dahlia touched her tender scalp, wincing. Still, not many would have intervened against Jenkins and his men. They've terrorized Pine Creek for months. Owen looked back at her, his expression serious. "That changes now. No one's above the law in my town." "Your town?" Dahlia couldn't help the small smile that curved her lips. "You've been here less than a week." A hint of amusement lightened his features. "I plan to stay, Miss Reynolds. Pine Creek deserves better than men like Jenkins." Dahlia watched him as he filled his canteen from the stream. There was something about the set of his shoulders, the quiet confidence in his movements, that made her believe him. Perhaps Pine Creek finally had a sheriff who could bring order to their corner of Montana territory. "Here," he said, returning to offer her the canteen. "You should drink." Their fingers brushed as she took it, sending an unexpected tingle up her arm. Dahlia drank deeply, only now realizing how thirsty she was. "We should get moving," Owen said, scanning the horizon. "Your father will be worried." "He might not even know I'm gone," Dahlia admitted sadly. "The fever takes him sometimes, leaves him confused." Owen's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is there a doctor looking after him?" "Dr. Wilson comes by when he can, but there's little to be done except wait." Dahlia handed back the canteen. "I've been managing the homestead mostly on my own these past months." "That's a heavy burden for one person," Owen observed. Dahlia straightened her shoulders. "I'm stronger than I look, Sheriff Daniels." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I don't doubt that for a moment, Miss Reynolds." He helped her back onto the horse, and they rode at a more measured pace toward the Reynolds homestead. Dahlia directed him away from the main road, taking a lesser-known trail through a stand of pines. The sky darkened as they traveled, and the first stars appeared above the mountains. The Reynolds place came into view as they emerged from the trees, a modest cabin with a small barn and corral. A thin plume of smoke rose from the chimney, and a single lamp glowed in the window. "That's odd," Dahlia murmured as they approached. "I don't remember leaving a lamp lit." Owen's posture immediately tensed. "Stay behind me," he instructed, drawing his revolver as they dismounted. They approached the cabin cautiously. Owen motioned for Dahlia to remain by his horse while he crept closer to peek through the window. After a tense moment, his shoulders relaxed. "There's an older woman inside," he said quietly. "Gray hair, wearing a dark dress." Relief flooded Dahlia. "That's Mrs. Abernathy from the next homestead. She checks on Father sometimes when I'm in town." They entered the cabin to find Mrs. Abernathy, a kindly widow in her 60s, sitting beside Samuel Reynolds's bed. The older man was awake, though his face was pale and drawn with illness. "Dahlia!" he exclaimed weakly when he saw her. His eyes narrowed at her disheveled appearance and the sight of the sheriff behind her. "What's happened?" Mrs. Abernathy rose, concern etched across her weathered face. "Land's sake. Child, you look like you've been dragged behind a wagon." "Nearly was," Owen said grimly. "Jenkins and his men tried to abduct Miss Reynolds in town. Over a gambling debt, apparently." Samuel Reynolds's face crumpled with shame. "Oh, Dahlia, I'm so sorry. I never meant—" "It's all right, Pa." Dahlia rushed to his bedside, taking his frail hand in hers. "I'm fine." Sheriff Daniels stopped them. Samuel's feverish eyes turned to Owen. "Thank you, Sheriff. I don't know how I can repay you." "No repayment necessary," Owen assured him. "But I do need to know exactly how much you owe Jenkins. This needs to be settled legally." While Dahlia helped her father sip some water, Samuel explained about the poker games he'd participated in before falling ill. The debt wasn't enormous, $87, but it was more than the Reynolds family could spare, with Samuel unable to work their small farm. "I'll handle Jenkins," Owen promised. "He won't be bothering your daughter again." Mrs. Abernathy insisted on staying the night to help with Samuel, especially after hearing about the day's events. "You've had quite a shock, dear," she told Dahlia. "You should rest." Dahlia walked Owen to the door. Outside, the night had fully descended, the stars brilliant against the vast Montana sky. "I can't thank you enough," she said quietly. "Lock your doors tonight," Owen replied. "I'll come by tomorrow to check on you both." Dahlia nodded, suddenly reluctant to see him leave. "Be careful, Sheriff. Jenkins has friends." "So do I," Owen said with a slight smile. "I wouldn't have taken this job if I didn't believe good folks outnumber the bad ones here." He tipped his hat, then mounted his horse and rode back toward town. Dahlia watched until he disappeared into the darkness, her hand unconsciously touching her hair where Jenkins had grabbed her. Something told her that Pine Creek and her life had just changed irrevocably with the arrival of Sheriff Owen Daniels. True to his word, Owen returned the following morning. Dahlia was in the garden, harvesting the vegetables that would be their dinner, when she heard the approach of a horse. Her heart quickened at the sight of the chestnut stallion and its rider. "Morning, Miss Reynolds," Owen called, dismounting smoothly. He looked fresher today in a clean shirt, his badge polished and gleaming in the morning sun. "Sheriff Daniels," she acknowledged, brushing soil from her hands. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come back." "I said I would," he replied simply, as if that settled the matter. Dahlia nodded toward the cabin. "Pa's having a better day. Mrs. Abernathy left about an hour ago." "Good. I'd like to speak with him." Owen removed his hat as they walked to the cabin. "I've also been to see Jenkins." Dahlia stopped short. "You confronted him already? Alone?" "I'm the sheriff, Miss Reynolds. It's my job." There was no bravado in his tone, just quiet certainty. "Jenkins won't be bothering you anymore. I've given him 2 weeks to leave Pine Creek." "You can do that?" "I can when I catch someone attempting to kidnap an innocent woman." Owen's jaw tightened. "And when I discover he's been running an illegal gambling operation out of the back room of the Silver Dollar." Inside the cabin, Samuel Reynolds was sitting up in bed. Some color returned to his hollow cheeks. He greeted Owen with obvious gratitude. "Sheriff, I can't begin to thank you enough for what you did for my Dahlia." "Just upholding the law, sir." Owen sat in the chair beside the bed. "But we need to discuss this debt situation." Over the next half hour, Owen explained that he'd confiscated Jenkins's illegal gambling records and frozen his assets pending an investigation. The debt was nullified due to the illegal nature of the games. "That won't stop him from holding a grudge," Samuel warned weakly. "No," Owen agreed, "but it will stop him from legally pursuing you for the money." and he knows that any move against your family will result in serious charges. Dahlia, who had been quietly preparing coffee for them, brought 2 cups to the table. You said you're giving him 2 weeks to leave town? Yes. He and his men have caused enough trouble in Pine Creek. This community deserves better. Samuel shook his head slowly. Jenkins has powerful friends in Montana City. The territorial judge, for one. Judge Hollister? Owen asked, accepting the coffee from Dahlia with a nod of thanks. I've met him. Seems like a fair man. Fair to those who line his pockets, Samuel muttered. Dahlia shot her father a warning look. They couldn't afford to make more enemies, especially not ones with badges or gavels. Owen seemed to read her concern. I understand your skepticism, Mr. Reynolds. Trust is earned, not given. All I ask is that you give me a chance to prove that law and order can work in Pine Creek. After Owen left, promising to check in regularly, Dahlia helped her father back into bed for a rest. That's a good man, Samuel said unexpectedly as she tucked the blanket around him. The sheriff? You've spoken to him for all of 30 minutes, Dahlia replied, though she couldn't deny the flutter in her chest when she thought of Owen Daniels. I know men, daughter. Spent my life reading them across poker tables before I got sick. That one has honest eyes. Samuel coughed weakly. And he looks at you the way a man looks at his future. Pa! Dahlia felt heat rise to her cheeks. Don't be ridiculous. He was just doing his job. Samuel smiled faintly. If you say so. But I haven't seen you blush like that since Tommy Wilson tried to kiss you behind the schoolhouse when you were 16. That was different, Dahlia protested. I was a child then. And now you're a woman of 23 who deserves more than being trapped on this failing homestead with a sick old man. Samuel's voice grew serious. I won't be around forever, Dahlia. I want to know you'll be taken care of. Dahlia squeezed her father's hand. Don't talk like that. You're going to get better, and we'll manage the farm together, just like always. But as the days passed, Samuel's brief improvement faded. The fever returned with a vengeance, and Dr. Wilson's visits became more frequent. Owen, true to his word, checked on them regularly, sometimes bringing supplies from town or helping with chores around the homestead before returning to his duties. Dahlia found herself looking forward to his visits more than she cared to admit. There was something comforting about his steady presence, the way he listened when she spoke, really listened instead of simply waiting for his turn to talk. A week after the incident with Jenkins, Owen arrived at the homestead with news. He found Dahlia in the barn, struggling to mend a broken harness for their aging plow horse. Need a hand? He offered, rolling up his sleeves. Dahlia relinquished the tough leather gratefully. I'm better with a needle and thread than with these leather tools. Owen worked on the harness with practiced ease. How's your father today? The same, Dahlia sighed. Dr. Wilson says we just have to wait. Owen nodded sympathetically. I've been asking around town about Jenkins. Turns out your father wasn't his only victim. Several families have come forward now that they know Jenkins is being forced out. Has he left yet? Dahlia asked, unable to keep the worry from her voice. No, he still has another week. Owen glanced at her. But he's been quiet. Too quiet if you ask me. What do you mean? Owen set down the mended harness. Men like Jenkins don't usually go quietly. I've got Deputy Miller watching him, but I'd feel better if you weren't out here alone. I'm not alone. I have Pa. Even to her own ears, Dahlia's words sounded hollow. Dahlia. It was the first time Owen had used her given name, and it sent a curious warmth through her. I don't want to frighten you, but until Jenkins is gone from Pine Creek, I think you should consider staying in town. I can't leave Pa, she protested. Bring him too. Mrs. Whitaker has rooms above the cafe. She'd be happy to rent one to you both. and the doctor could check on your father more easily there. Dahlia hesitated. The thought of abandoning the homestead, even temporarily, felt like failure. This land had been in her family for 15 years, since they'd first come to Montana Territory when she was just 8 years old. "We can't afford it," she said finally, the practical concern overriding her emotional attachment. "I've taken care of that," Owen replied. "Consider it an advance on the reward money for helping me expose Jenkins's illegal operations." Pride made Dahlia straighten her spine. "I don't need charity, Sheriff." "It's not charity," Owen insisted. "It's payment for information provided. And it's Owen, not Sheriff. At least when I'm not wearing the badge." Their eyes met, and Dahlia felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. There was something in Owen's gaze that made her feel seen, truly seen, for perhaps the first time in her life. "I'll think about it," she conceded. The decision was made for her the very next day when Jenkins and 2 of his men were spotted riding near the Reynolds property. Owen arrived in time to intercept them on the road, but the message was clear. Jenkins wasn't planning to leave without revenge. By nightfall, Dahlia and Samuel were installed in a comfortable room above Whitaker's cafe in Pine Creek. Mrs. Whitaker, a plump, cheerful widow who had known Dahlia since childhood, fussed over Samuel and insisted on bringing up extra pillows and blankets. "Sheriff Daniels arranged everything," she told Dahlia with a knowing smile. "Paid for 2 weeks in advance, he did, and made sure I knew to give you both the best room." Dahlia felt both grateful and uncomfortable. "That was very kind of him, but we can't—" "Nonsense, dear," Mrs. Whitaker interrupted. "That man clearly thinks the world of you, and he's right to. You've had a hard time of it these past months with your father's illness." "He's just doing his job," Dahlia insisted, though her heart skipped at Mrs. Whitaker's assessment. The older woman gave her a skeptical look. "If you say so, dear, though I've never seen a lawman work so hard to protect one particular citizen before. He's had Deputy Miller riding out to check your property twice daily. Did you know that?" Dahlia hadn't known, and the information left her with a confusing mix of emotions. Was it possible that Owen's concern went beyond his professional duties? She got her answer 2 days later when Owen invited her to have dinner with him at the cafe. Samuel was sleeping peacefully, watched over by Mrs. Whitaker, giving Dahlia her first opportunity to relax in months. Owen had reserved a small table in the corner, away from the curious eyes of Pine Creek's residents. He'd even put on a clean shirt and combed his dark hair, Dahlia noted with a strange flutter of pleasure. "You look lovely," he said simply as she sat down. Dahlia smoothed the skirt of her best dress, a dark green cotton she rarely had occasion to wear. "Thank you. It feels strange to be in town like this, not running errands or rushing back to the homestead." "It suits you," Owen said, "being able to breathe for a moment." Over plates of Mrs. Whitaker's famous roast beef and potatoes they talked. Really talked in a way Dahlia hadn't done with anyone in years. Owen told her about growing up in Missouri, about his time as a Union soldier despite being only 16 when he lied about his age to enlist, about the 5 years he'd spent as a deputy in Kansas before accepting the sheriff's position in Pine Creek. "Why here?" Dahlia asked curiously. "Pine Creek isn't exactly a thriving metropolis." Owen's blue eyes held hers. "Honest answer?" She nodded. "I was tired of burying friends. Worked in Dodge City for a while, too many funerals. Wanted somewhere smaller, somewhere I might actually make a difference before the undertaker got rich off my efforts." "And have you made a difference?" His expression softened. "I'd like to think I made a difference to you." The simple sincerity of his words touched something deep inside Dahlia. "You have," she admitted quietly. "More than I can say." Their conversation was interrupted by the cafe door bursting open. Deputy Miller stood there, his young face flushed with exertion. "Sheriff," Jenkins and his men just set fire to the livery stable. Owen was on his feet instantly, his hand going to his gun. Anyone inside? Old Frank was sleeping in the back room, but we got him out. The boys have formed a bucket line, but it's spreading fast. Owen looked torn, glancing at Dahlia with regret. Go, she urged him. This is your job. He nodded grimly. Stay here with your father. Lock the door. Dahlia watched from the cafe window as Owen raced down the street toward the orange glow illuminating the night sky. The livery stable was at the edge of town, dangerously close to several wooden buildings, including the schoolhouse. For hours, Dahlia paced anxiously, checking on her sleeping father periodically while watching the commotion from the window. The entire town had mobilized to fight the fire, passing buckets of water from the well to the burning building. It was well past midnight when Owen returned, his face smudged with soot, his clothes reeking of smoke. Mrs. Whitaker had long since gone to bed, but Dahlia had kept coffee warm on the stove. You're still up, he said, sounding exhausted but pleased. I couldn't sleep. Dahlia poured him a cup of coffee. How bad is it? We saved most of the livery, but the back section is gone. Could have been much worse. Owen accepted the coffee gratefully. Jenkins made sure he was seen at the Silver Dollar all evening, but I know he ordered this. Did anyone get hurt? Minor burns and smoke. Nothing serious. Owen rubbed his temples. But this ends now. I'm not waiting another week. Jenkins leaves tomorrow, or I'm arresting him. Dahlia felt fear twist in her stomach. He won't go quietly. No, Owen agreed. He won't. The confrontation came sooner than expected. As Owen was leaving the cafe to return to his office, a shot rang out in the pre-dawn darkness. The bullet splintered the wooden post beside him, missing his head by inches. Dahlia, who had been seeing him out, gasped in horror. Get inside, Owen ordered, pushing her back through the doorway while drawing his revolver. 2 more shots followed, pinging off the metal sign above the cafe. Owen fired back, aiming toward the shadows across the street where the shots had originated. Jenkins, he shouted. This is your one chance to surrender. Laughter was the only response, followed by another shot that shattered the cafe window, sending glass spraying over the tables inside. Dahlia crouched behind the counter, heart pounding in her chest. She could hear shouts outside as the town awakened to the gunfight in their streets. After a tense standoff, Deputy Miller's voice called out, I've got him, Sheriff, coming in from behind. There was a scuffle, more shouting, then silence. Dahlia waited, scarcely breathing, until Owen reappeared in the doorway. It's over, he said, holstering his weapon. Miller caught Jenkins trying to circle around behind the general store. Relief washed over Dahlia, followed quickly by concern as she noticed Owen clutching his left arm, blood seeping between his fingers. You're hurt. She rushed to him, helping him to a chair. Just grazed me, Owen grimaced. I've had worse. Despite his protests, Dahlia insisted on cleaning and bandaging the wound, a deep graze along his bicep that had torn through his shirt and into the flesh beneath. Her fingers trembled slightly as she worked, keenly aware of his eyes on her face. Thank you, he said softly when she'd finished. Dahlia looked up, suddenly realizing how close they were. I should be thanking you. Again. Dahlia. Owen's voice was rough with emotion. I need to say something. Her heart hammered in her chest. Yes. I didn't take this job just to make a difference in some anonymous town. His good hand covered hers where it rested on the table. I came because I'd heard stories about a place that needed help, about good people being pushed around by men like Jenkins. But since I've been here since I met you, it's become more than that. Owen, let me finish, please. His blue eyes were intense, vulnerable. I know we haven't known each other long, but sometimes a man just knows. Care for you, Dahlia. More than I should, maybe, given my position. But I wanted you to know. The confession hung in the air between them. Dahlia felt as though she stood at a crossroads, one path leading back to the lonely existence she'd known, the other toward something frightening and wonderful with this man who had already risked his life for her more than once. I care for you too, she whispered, the words feeling simultaneously terrifying and right. But my father, your father told me yesterday that he thinks I should court you properly, Owen admitted with a small smile. When I went to check on him while you were helping Mrs. Whitaker with dinner. Dahlia's eyes widened. He did. Owen nodded. Said he hadn't seen you smile so much in years as you have this past week. Before Dahlia could respond, Deputy Miller burst through the door, his young face flushed with excitement and alarm. Sheriff, Jenkins escaped. Knocked me out cold when I was locking him up. Owen was on his feet immediately, wincing as the movement jarred his injured arm. Which way did he go? North, toward Montana City. But Sheriff, he was raving about getting even with you both. Miller looked nervously at Dahlia. Said he wasn't leaving without settling scores. Owen's expression hardened. Miller, get Miss Reynolds and her father to the jailhouse. It's the most secure building in town. No windows in the back room. What are you going to do? Dahlia asked, fear gripping her heart. Find Jenkins before he circles back. He won't leave the territory, he has too much invested here with his gambling operation. Owen checked his revolver. Stay with Miller. I'll be back as soon as I can. Before Dahlia could protest, Owen strode out into the street where his horse was already waiting, saddled by one of the townspeople who had responded to the earlier gunfire. The next hours were the longest of Dahlia's life. She sat in the back room of the jailhouse with her father, who had been moved there on a makeshift pallet, while Deputy Miller nervously paced the front office. The young deputy couldn't have been more than 20. His boyish face still sporting patches where his beard hadn't fully grown in. Should the sheriff have been back by now? Dahlia finally asked as noon approached with no word from Owen. Miller shifted uncomfortably. Depends how far Jenkins got. But the sheriff's the best tracker I've ever seen. If anyone can find him, Sheriff Daniels can. The reassurance did little to calm Dahlia's nerves. Every sound from outside made her jump, imagining Jenkins returning to exact his revenge. It was mid-afternoon when they heard the commotion outside, horses approaching at a gallop, men shouting. Miller drew his gun, positioning himself between the door and Dahlia. The door flew open to reveal Owen, dusty and grim-faced but very much alive. Behind him, several townsmen were escorting a bound and bloody Jenkins toward the cell block. You found him? Dahlia breathed, relief flooding through her. Caught him doubling back through Carson's Ridge, Owen confirmed. He wasn't alone. Had his two usual companions with him. Where are they? Miller asked, eyeing the single prisoner. Owen's expression darkened. They decided to resist arrest. Made a poor choice. Dahlia understood the implication. Are you all right? Fine. Owen removed his hat, revealing a nasty gash along his temple that belied his claim. Jenkins will stand trial for arson, attempted murder, and running an illegal gambling operation. Judge Hollister is due in town next week. The judge that Pa said was in Jenkins's pocket? Dahlia asked quietly. Owen met her eyes. That's why I'll be personally escorting Jenkins to Montana City tomorrow. The territorial governor has agreed to assign a different judge after I sent a telegram outlining my concerns. The relief Dahlia felt was tempered by a new worry. You're leaving. Just for a few days, Owen assured her. Miller will keep watch here, and I've deputized Carson and Wilkins to help patrol until I return. Once Jenkins was securely locked away, Owen walked Dahlia and her father back to the room above the cafe. Samuel was exhausted by the ordeal and fell asleep almost immediately, leaving Dahlia and Owen alone in the small sitting area. "I was worried," Dahlia admitted, reaching out to gently touch the gash on Owen's temple. He caught her hand, holding it against his face. "I promised I'd come back." "Men make promises all the time," Dahlia said softly. "Especially to women they think they care for in the heat of danger." Owen's blue eyes searched hers. "Is that what you think this is? Some passing fancy born of excitement?" "I don't know what to think," Dahlia confessed. "Everything has happened so fast. A fortnight ago, I didn't even know you existed. And now I can't imagine Pine Creek without you." The truth of the words surprised her as she spoke them. Owen stepped closer, still holding her hand. "Dahlia, I meant what I said earlier. I care for you, deeply. Nothing about that will change, whether I'm gone for 3 days or 3 months." "You barely know me," she protested weakly. "I know enough," he countered. "I know you're brave and loyal. I know you've been carrying the weight of this homestead and your father's illness alone for too long. I know your favorite flower is the wild violet that grows by the creek, because you always pause to look at them when we ride past." Dahlia blinked in surprise. "How did you notice that?" "Because I see you, Dahlia Reynolds. Not just the pretty face or the daughter of a sick man, but you." The words touched something deep inside her that had been lonely for so long she'd almost forgotten it existed. Before she could think better of it, Dahlia rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips softly to his. Owen froze for a heartbeat, then his arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as he returned the kiss with gentle insistence. When they finally parted, both a little breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he murmured. "I need to prepare for tomorrow's journey." Dahlia nodded, reluctantly stepping back. "Be careful in Montana City. Jenkins still has friends there." "I will." Owen's fingers traced her cheek. "And when I return, we have much to discuss about the future." The promise in those words carried Dahlia through the next 4 days as she waited anxiously for Owen's return. Samuel continued to improve, regaining enough strength to sit in a chair by the window and watch the comings and goings of Pine Creek below. "You miss him," Samuel observed on the 3rd day, catching Dahlia glancing down the street for the 100th time. "I'm just concerned," Dahlia deflected. "Montana City can be dangerous." Samuel's knowing smile said he wasn't fooled. "Daughter, I've watched you blossom this past fortnight. Don't let fear hold you back from happiness." "What fear?" "The fear that loving someone means losing them, like we lost your mother." Samuel's voice was gentle but firm. "Elizabeth would want you to live fully, Dahlia, not just survive." Tears pricked at Dahlia's eyes. Her mother had died of fever when Dahlia was 14, leaving a hole in their family that had never quite healed. "I barely know him, Pa." "You know what matters," Samuel insisted. "The rest comes with time." On the 4th day, word came that Owen had been spotted on the road from Montana City. Dahlia tried not to appear too eager as she helped Mrs. Whitaker prepare the evening meal, but her eyes kept straying to the window. The sun was setting when she finally saw him, riding slowly down the main street, his posture weary but straight. Dahlia wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside just as Owen dismounted in front of the cafe. Their eyes met across the dusty street, and something passed between them: relief, recognition, connection. "Welcome back, Sheriff," Dahlia called, trying to keep her voice casual though her heart was racing. Owen crossed to her, removing his hat. He looked tired, with several days' growth of beard darkening his jaw, but his blue eyes were clear and focused entirely on her. "Miss Reynolds," he replied, a small smile playing at his lips. "I trust all has been quiet here?" "Peaceful as can be," she assured him. My father's been asking after you. They went upstairs together, maintaining a proper distance that nevertheless crackled with unspoken awareness. Samuel greeted Owen warmly, insisting on hearing about the journey to Montana City and the fate of Jenkins. He'll be tried next month, Owen explained. The territorial governor has assigned Judge Patterson from Helena, a man with a reputation for fairness and immunity to bribes. And his friends in Montana City? Samuel asked. The ones who protected him all this time? Being investigated as we speak. Owen's expression was one of grim satisfaction. Turns out Jenkins kept detailed records of who he paid and how much. Those records are now in the hands of federal marshals. After Samuel tired and dozed off in his chair, Owen and Dahlia stepped out onto the small balcony that overlooked the main street. The evening was warm, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I missed you, Owen said simply, breaking the silence between them. Dahlia felt warmth spread through her chest. I missed you too. I had a lot of time to think on the ride to Montana City and back. Owen turned to face her, his expression serious. About what I want. About the future. And what did you decide? Dahlia asked, her heart beating faster. That I want a future with you in it, Dahlia. Owen took her hand gently in his. I know it's soon. Too soon, maybe, by proper standards. But life on the frontier has taught me not to waste time when something matters. Dahlia squeezed his hand. My father said something similar while you were gone. Did he? Owen's eyebrows rose in surprise. He said I know what matters about you, and the rest comes with time. Dahlia met his gaze steadily. He's right. I do know what matters. And what's that? That you're a good man. That you keep your promises. That when Jenkins had me by my hair, dragging me toward that wagon, you didn't hesitate to help a woman you didn't even know. Dahlia stepped closer. That's the kind of man I could build a life with. Owen's eyes darkened with emotion. Is that an acceptance of an offer I haven't formally made yet? Dahlia laughed softly. Perhaps it's an encouragement to make that offer, when you feel the time is right. Owen's smile was radiant. Dahlia Reynolds, you are the most remarkable woman I've ever met. He kissed her then, beneath the Montana stars. A kiss full of promise and possibility. When they parted, Dahlia felt as though something long dormant inside her had finally awakened hope for a future brighter than she had dared to imagine. Over the next month, Pine Creek saw many changes. With Jenkins gone and his operation dismantled, the town began to flourish. Merchants who had been paying protection money now invested in their businesses, and families who had been considering leaving decided to stay. Samuel Reynolds continued to improve, gradually regaining his strength, though Dr. Wilson warned he would never be fully robust again. Owen courted Dahlia properly, taking her for rides along the creek, escorting her to church services, and even organizing a town social where they danced together under the appreciative eyes of Pine Creek's residents. The Reynolds homestead was not abandoned. Instead, with Owen's help and the assistance of neighbors grateful for the new peace in the community, repairs were made to the cabin and barn. The small farm began to thrive again under shared care. 6 weeks after Owen had rescued her from Jenkins, he took Dahlia on a picnic to the spot by the stream where they had rested that first day. Summer was in full bloom, wildflowers carpeting the meadow and the air sweet with the scent of pine. I have something to ask you, Owen said as they sat side by side on the blanket he'd spread beneath a towering cottonwood tree. Dahlia's heart skipped. Yes. Owen took her hand, his expression solemn yet filled with warmth. Dahlia Reynolds, from the moment I first saw you, even in that terrible circumstance, something in me recognized you. Not just as someone who needed help, but as someone who could help me become the man I want to be. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small ring with a modest pearl set in silver. This was my mother's. I'd be honored if you would wear it as my wife. Tears blurred Dahlia's vision. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Owen." The kiss they shared sealed a promise that had begun the day he'd swept her onto his horse and ridden hard away from danger, a promise of protection, partnership, and love that would weather whatever the Montana frontier might bring. They were married 2 weeks later in Pine Creek's small church, with Samuel proudly walking his daughter down the aisle despite needing a cane for support. Mrs. Whitaker cried openly, while Deputy Miller stood awkwardly as best man, blushing furiously when Owen winked at him during the vows. Their life together began in the rooms above the cafe while they worked together to expand the cabin on the Reynolds homestead. Owen continued his duties as sheriff, bringing a lasting peace to Pine Creek that allowed the small settlement to grow into a proper town. A year after their wedding, Dahlia gave birth to a son they named James Samuel Daniels, a sturdy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Samuel doted on his grandson, telling the infant stories of the early days in Montana Territory as the baby cooed in his cradle. On their second wedding anniversary, Owen took Dahlia back to the stream where he had proposed. James stayed with his grandfather, giving the couple a rare day to themselves. "Happy?" Owen asked as they sat with their feet dangling in the cool water. Dahlia leaned against his shoulder, contentment filling her heart. "More than I ever thought possible. Even though you're married to the sheriff? Even with all the worry that brings?" "Especially because I'm married to the sheriff," Dahlia corrected, turning to face him. "A man who sees injustice and fights it, who keeps his promises, who looks at me like I'm the sunrise after a long night." Owen's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "That's a pretty way of saying I'm besotted with you, Mrs. Daniels. Are you complaining, Sheriff?" Dahlia teased, running her fingers through the hair at his nape. "Not for a moment." Owen pulled her closer. "I thank God every day for bringing me to Pine Creek, for letting me be there when Jenkins dragged you toward that wagon. As terrible as that day was," Dahlia said softly, "I can't regret it. It brought us together." "Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best futures," Owen observed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And this future, with you, is better than anything I could have imagined." As the sun began to set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, Owen and Dahlia walked hand in hand back toward town. They would collect their son from Samuel, return to the homestead that was now their family home, and continue building the life they had forged together. Pine Creek would continue to grow and change around them. 3 years later, they would welcome a daughter, Elizabeth Rose, named for Dahlia's mother. Samuel would live to see his granddaughter's 5th birthday before peacefully passing in his sleep, secure in the knowledge that his Dahlia was loved and protected. Owen would remain sheriff for another 15 years before retiring to focus entirely on the ranch they had built from the original homestead. Their children would grow strong and independent, nurtured by parents whose love had been forged in a moment of danger and grown through years of partnership. And sometimes, on summer evenings when the children were asleep, Owen and Dahlia would sit on their porch and watch the stars appear over Montana, their hands intertwined, marveling at how a single moment a woman being dragged by her hair, a cowboy sheriff riding to the rescue had changed the course of their lives forever. In those quiet moments, they would remember that love, like the Montana wilderness, could be both fierce and tender, dangerous and nurturing, but always worth fighting for. The Reynolds Daniels Ranch would become one of the most prosperous in the region, known for its fine horses and the fairness with which its owners conducted business. James would eventually take over its management, while Elizabeth would surprise everyone by becoming Pine Creek's first female schoolteacher after attending college in Helena. But through all the changes and growth, one story would be told and retold in their family, and throughout Pine Creek the story of a brave sheriff who had ridden into town just in time to save a young woman from a terrible fate, and how that rescue had led to a love that helped tame a corner of the wild Montana frontier. It was, after all, Not just their story, but the story of the West itself, how courage, determination, and love could transform both people and places, bringing light and hope to even the darkest corners of the frontier.